As required by Montana law, members of the community are given an opportunity to make brief comments to the board on any matters not included in the agenda. Individuals wishing to be heard shall first be recognized by the chair. Individuals, after identifying themselves, will proceed to make brief comments. The board would like to remind everyone that to avoid violations of individual rights of privacy, a member of the public wishing to address the board will not be allowed to make comments about any student, staff member, or member of the general public. No action may be taken on any matter discussed during the public comment portion of the meeting until such time as the matter is specifically noted on an agenda and the public has been allowed the opportunity to comment. Do we have any public comment on a non-agenda item for this meeting? Okay, seeing none, we'll begin our meeting with student and staff recognition.
Good evening. I'm Leslie Atkinson, the Public Information Officer, and I would like to start by inviting our Belgrade High School drama students up to the front, please, along with Lynn and Jeff West. All right. Belgrade High School students attended the Montana Thespian Festival in Missoula on January 24th and 25th. Ava Reinbold, who is a sophomore here at BHS, wrote and directed a production that was presented at the festival called Death by Limelight. It is the first time since Belgrade joined the International Thespian Society nearly 25 years ago that a student has written and directed a show. BHS students received great comments from the adjudicators and received outstanding recognition for their makeup and props. In addition, the tech team of Cassidy Iverson, Reese Leslie, Karma Johnston, and Gavin Jacobson received first place for their participation in the Tech Olympics. We're going to recognize all of these students, and then students, if you could please stay, we will take pictures after all of the recognition. Gavin Jacobson, Karma Johnston, Reese Leslie, Cassidy Iverson, Ava Reinbold, Gwen Klingen, Ava Olson, Lauren Varley, Emma Killam, Maddie Ostema, Caitlin Togstad, Hannah Wells, Nick Callentine, Linus McKenna, Rory Iverson, Mackenzie Cardwell, Rachel Westbrook, Brianna Lamphere, Joseph Soria, Sophie Chadwick, Bella Solberg, Cameron Dixon, and that is all. If you'd like to have a seat, we'll take your picture just in a few minutes. Now I'd like to bring up all of our Saddle Peak student leaders. You guys can all stand this direction and this direction if you're buddies.
Okay, some people can stand over here too. Face over here.
Saddle Peak Elementary School started a student leaders program this spring. The goals were to have jobs within the school to promote a sense of community, provide leadership opportunities for the students, and give them real life experiences through the application and interview process. The students work their job once per week, and all jobs are outside of class time, at recess, before and after school. This project is headed by Megan Simons, our behavior interventionist at Saddle Peak. 54 students were chosen out of about 140 submitted applications. In addition to seeing these students take pride and ownership of their job, they are also making connections with other students that they wouldn't normally have contact with. Students hold the job for 1 quarter, and they will help training the next quarter's selected students. Megan, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. I'm Megan Simons. We started this program to kind of get students to take an initiative in the community around the school, and we were shocked with how many students applied for jobs. We did a fun little interview, whatever you want to call it, and the purpose of it is to just have students practice talking positively about themselves, especially to someone else, which can be uncomfortable. But you guys did great, and that's a skill you'll use for your whole life. So it's been really cool to see. We've been doing these jobs about like 8 or 10 weeks, and they start as, you know, a leadership role, and it really is contagious. It just spreads and spreads. One of my personal favorite things is you get to see them in a different light that you might not see in the classroom. Like in the classroom or on the playground, a student might be shy and kind of reserved, and then you see them out doing crosswalk duty, and they are in charge. They are saying hi to everyone. They're greeting people by name. So it's really cool. And Saddle Peak is really, really proud of you guys. And if you ever come to Saddle Peak and you see them in these little vests, you can thank them because they're giving up their time to help the school. And even on cold days, crosswalk kids come in and say, what else can I do? I want to help. I still want a job. So you guys are really helping out our entire school, and people want to be like you at our school. You guys are the leaders. So we were going to just do like a blanket thanking of them, but if I could just call the names of the kids who are here, because I think it's kind of important. So if I call your name, you're going to come get your certificate. Nora Wilder, AJ Shane, Jayla Harpole Starkey, Io, Grayson Forsberg, Sebastian Olmstead, nice job, Lucy Rieger, Luke Robinson, Trennan Brown, Grayson Garcia, Carson Smith, Voss Campbell, William Hale, Jackson Griffith, Catherine Allred, and Abigail Blount. So we have certificates for everyone, but we just wanted to say thank you guys. You did a great job. You're the leaders at Saddle Peak.
Thank you, Saddle Peak leaders. If you want to have a seat, we'll take your picture in just a couple of moments. Next, I would like to invite up our 2 speech and debate students along with their coach, Kristen Wilcox. Kristen Wilcox is the returning first-year head speech and debate coach at Belgrade High. She actively recruited students to rebuild the speech and debate program as the previous year was down to 3 participants. This year's team ballooned to over 20 students. While seeing team and individual success throughout the season, the pinnacle is the state meet that was held in Bozeman at the end of January. The AA competition is very fierce, and we had 2 students who earned team points for Belgrade. BHS junior Dimitri Hodap won 7th place in dramatic interpretation, and freshman Leah Atkinson won 12th place in dramatic interpretation. And I'd like to introduce Kristen now to speak on her students.
I don't want to take a lot of time. There's a lot of things on the agenda today, but I just want to make sure that everyone recognizes what an accomplishment it was for these 2 to become semifinalists and finalists at state. They were facing students in semifinals and finals that have been doing this thing for 4 years. And most of the students that get there are seniors with a lot of practice. Dimitri is a junior, but he's never done this before. This was his first time trying speech and debate. And of course, Leah is a freshman. So the fact that they were up there with the big dogs and holding their own was really impressive. And I just want to say that what set these two kids apart from the rest of the team is their understanding of nuance. They understood from the beginning that they were going to have to tweak very tiny things in their pieces to make them shine against the others. And they were both just willing to do that and be incredibly coachable and listened to me and collaborated with me and the other coaches. And it really shows that they care about a final product, which is something we like to see of all of our kids at Belgrade High School. Thanks.
And one more recognition, and I'm hoping, I didn't get confirmation. Do we have someone here from Little Belt Cattle Company? No, they were trying to get someone here, so it looks like we do not have a representative, but Little Belt Cattle Company reached out to our school nutrition director to donate Montana beef to our schools. They donated 1,070 pounds of Angus beef. This is not the first time we've received a donation from Little Belt Cattle Company. They were generous enough to donate last year. And in fact, we served their Montana beef at a statewide FFA leadership event hosted by Belgrade schools. We're greatly appreciative of the support of our school district, of their support of our school district, and we're proud to be able to serve high quality Montana grown products in our cafeteria. So thank you to Little Belt Cattle Company. If we could take just a couple of minutes for photos, we'll get those done.
You're cold. No, my back is killing me. Do you work today? Too nervous.
Don't cover your face if you like to see everyone. I'm gonna have you slide over just a little bit. There we go. And I want to see William. All right, are you ready? Look at me. Yeah. Wonderful, thank you.
With the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. That was awesome, celebrating all those wonderful students. I would also like to thank our stellar bus drivers for their expertise in the snowy, cold weather. We rely on our bus drivers to get our kids to school. They are the first person they see. There's a smile on their face and a hello, good morning, and I'll see you tomorrow when they get dropped off. And we just appreciate everything they do on these roads to make sure our kids get to school. We had, as you know, the legislature's in session. We had a team of 4 administrators and 2 trustees. It was Rocky and Jesse attend the Public Education Day in Helena on January 29th. We were able to learn about some of the over 200 bills in this session that are connected to education. We got to talk with legislators. We got to watch the House and the Senate and committees in session. And there's an Education Day on the Hill coming up on Monday, February 17th, which is geared towards teachers. So we have a number of teachers going from the district. It's a great educational opportunity. It's a great opportunity to meet with legislators and tell the story of the value of public schools. And so I thank all of those who are able to go or who are able to follow what's going on in the legislature and contact your representatives and talk to them about what you see and what you think and what you feel. That's part of our civic engagement that is the cornerstone of our government. And just a reminder about weather delays and cancellations, we did send out the procedures again to all families at the end of last week. The general guidelines are if it's -30, and that can include wind chill factor, then we would cancel buses because the buses become unsafe at that temperature. So parents need to get students to school. If they feel it's unsafe, then they can call them in as an absence due to weather. And at -40, we would be looking at canceling school. Otherwise, we will be good hardy Montanans and bundle up and run school as usual. So the next 2 nights are questionable. So we'll be up early in the morning making that decision and getting the word out if something needs to change. We also have something we put in place a couple of years ago, a delay. So if we think the weather's going to be better 2 hours later, the delay is always for 2 hours. We tried to make the math easy. You just take whatever time your child would get on the bus, and that plus 2 hours is the time your child would get on the bus, or whatever time school starts, that plus 2 hours is whatever time school would start. The only difference is we don't serve breakfast, and we have a AM preschool special education class that would not meet because it would be almost over by the time they would get to school. So those are the only changes when we have a delay. And that's all I got. By 6:30 at the very latest. We're up before 5 looking at sometimes we go and, they're at the bus barn starting the buses to see how many start, things like that. So there's some things that have to happen. And we can check with, the city on the roads and the Department of Transportation and things like that too, if we have other questions. So, but by 6:30 at the latest is our what we're striving for.
Okay, any questions for Dee Dee? Moving on to student representative with Piper Bell.
All right, so since last month, there's not a whole lot that's been going on over at the high school, at least. We're about 3 weeks into the new semester, if my math is right. Our winter sports are still going strong. We have swim going to state in Great Falls this weekend, and we had 11 wrestlers, 3 on the girls' side and 8 on the guys' side, that are going to Billings this weekend for state. Recently, student council, last week we were selling roses at lunch. Students can come buy a rose for, I think, $3, and they get to write a message. And then on Valentine's Day, we're going to deliver them to students at the school. So it's just kind of fun. They wrote a message to their friends or young love or anything like that. And then recently, I also was working with student council on this project for Teacher of the Month. So with that, we sent out a Google form the last week of January, and we pick a teacher from a specific department. This year, because we started in January and we're trying to make it through all the departments this school year, we have 2 departments per 2 departments per month currently. This month's was social studies and health. But students get a vote on which teacher they believe deserves like the title, and then the teacher that wins will receive a goodie bag. And they also get kind of to know their students can leave a few notes on why they believe that teacher deserved that nomination, and they're excited to see like why their students love them so much and they appreciate it. And then last thing, class registration started for freshmen through juniors, which is very exciting for them. Also kind of nerve-wracking, but it's always fun to see. And teachers and students are excited about getting signed up for next year's classes. That's all.
Thanks, Piper. Moving on, District Clerk, Carrie.
I have a quick presentation for you guys on the budget, but also we had our audit and it got finished and we came out awesome with flying colors. We only had one finding and I think it's fixable. It has to do with counting students and our A and B count. So we had the same finding last year, and it's really coming down to processes and procedures that we're really working on getting those tightened up. Dee Dee's been in every school this week, visiting with principals and secretaries and answering questions and finding all the little quirks that come out. Today, we learned something about extracurricular participation that none of us knew. So we'll hopefully have a final A and B count in the next day or two based off of February 3rd was our count day. So audit was great. Did you have a question?
I have an audit question.
Yes.
They were happy with how we are receiving cash now.
Yes.
Cool.
In what aspect?
From students and clubs, that how we're receiving it is making them.
Yes, we're doing much better. They do like it. Yes.
Thanks.
Let me see here. See if I can get my presentation up on the TV. This is all new technology, so don't judge me. Right here. Okay. Okay, if you were at the finance meeting on Friday, this will be old news, so you can close your ears, Rocky. Mary Ellen. Okay, we're going to talk about next year's budget projections, which is, there's a lot going on this year because, like Dee Dee mentioned, it's a legislative session. So we'll talk about budget estimates, some expenditure estimates. We have mill levy election estimates that we can talk about. We have this legislative bill out there called the STARS Act, which is a pretty big bill that will make a big difference for us. And then we'll talk about if you guys decide you want to issue those bonds that you already have authority to, kind of what the tax impact of that might be too. So you can take that into consideration if you're looking at running a mill levy and things like that. So right now, the estimated increase for next year between elementary and high school, because we do have 2 school districts, is just $246,280 is what we're estimating. Now, everybody's heard on the news that there was a 3% increase that the legislature approved for under House Bill 15. Well, House Bill 15 does a 3% increase on all the components that go into making your budget. But first of all, you only get 80% of that because the 20% is made up through your mill levy, if you run a mill levy. The rest of it comes from your enrollment, and you'll see when we do our A and B counts and stuff, our enrollment's not increasing. So in order to get the full 3% of that increase, you would have to have your enrollment continually increasing, and you would have to pass mill levy to get 100% funding to get the full 3%. So you can see from here right now, we're looking at 246,000, which is about almost a 1% increase, little less than a 1% without a mill levy. So if you think about what we're looking at for expenditures on that 246,000, we've got 329,000 that we know of because we have negotiated agreements with our teachers, our custodians, and our paras, and we also have salary schedules for the rest of our employees in the district. So if we looked at just moving everybody down 1 year of experience, which is what we call steps, that estimated increase is $329,000. I did a very conservative estimate, which I was told on Friday is probably too low because I don't look at my power bill at home. My husband pays the bills because I do them here. So I didn't know that Northwestern Energy just put out a big increase. So I only estimated a 2.5% increase in utilities for this presentation. And then I did a 15% increase for our property and liability insurance, which has been going up between 15 and 20% the last few years. And I don't anticipate that's going to get any better based off of the market. So our property and liability insurance is based off of replacement value of our buildings. So as the value of as the cost to replace them goes up, thus does our property and liability insurance. So just with those three things, which we know there's a myriad of other things that could increase in cost, we're looking at $426,000 increase. So we know the math doesn't add up on that when you look at those numbers. So we're right now without a mill levy or any additional funding, we're estimating about $180,000 deficit to start out with. If we run a mill levy, we're looking at being able to add $149,000 between the two districts. On a $600,000 home, the mill levy would be about $10.53 a year to get that 149. And that's elementary and high school together. That they would both have to pass to get the full 149. And so that would give us still a shortfall of about $30,000. Then you have the STARS Act that comes into play. The STARS Act is for next year, for FY26. It's a multi-year bill that has different parts of it that phase in during different years. But if we're just looking at next year, for FY26, we're looking at you would have to have teacher base pay at $41,615, which ours is currently at $41,000. Our base teacher pay has to be 62% of our average teacher pay. And then if we meet those thresholds, we would qualify for, I'm estimating, approximately another $800,000 in funding. If we meet those thresholds and the bill passes. It still hasn't passed 100%, so we can't guarantee we're going to get it, but it's looking very positive. So you figure in the STARS Act funding. So now we take that $30,000 shortfall that we were looking at before, and you add in the $800,000. In order to meet the STARS Act, we have to increase that $615 on our base pay. So just to do that on our teacher salary schedule, that'd be another $152,000 to meet that. So that's more than just steps now. And then that gives us $621,000 remaining. But then you also have wage increases for other areas, other employees. And so we have our classified admin, certified admin, the superintendent, I estimated about $35,000 there for an increase. And then hourly employees, that's your paras, custodians, food service. Those people are, to give them, I estimated $1 an hour increase because we're pretty low in comparison to everybody around. That puts us at 431,000 for those. So that gives us 467,000 or thereabouts that for an estimated total in salaries. So that gives us about $153,630 left over. Well, remember our mill levy was 140. So if we ran a mill levy and it didn't pass at 149,000, we might come out ahead about, $4,000 or $5,000. So, and that's with that's a big influx of money that we haven't had in the system for a while. So, but then we have to think about everything else that goes in. And we know that that's only $615 on every cell on the salary matrix for teachers. The past 2 negotiation cycles, we've done $1,000 a cell. So this would be less than what we've been doing. And then I only estimated $1 per hour for all the classified employees, which we know there's some different classifications like our custodians. Our custodians, we were looking at the data, and Thomas did a lot of research, and the city of Bozeman for similar positions pays 56% more than we do. The city of Belgrade is 41% more than we do for custodial workers, and MSU is 35% more. Bozeman School District's 33% more. So we know that particular area, we probably need to go more than $1 an hour increase. We're probably looking, I think our starting salaries there hourly is 16, and it needs to be up closer to 20. So we know we have some work to do in there. So we know that's going to increase it. Our district health insurance contribution is very low. We pay about $480 per single employee right now. There was some data that came out last year, and a lot of schools are up into the $800 to $1,000 contributions per employee. So we're very low in that area as well. And we've been talking with the union. I know we're going into negotiations and stuff, and we think that's an important area that we're going to need to address coming up. This doesn't account for any new positions or programs that we want to work on. It doesn't work on updates to curriculum. We got lucky with ESSER money, if you can call it lucky, and we were able to refresh a lot of our curriculum the last few years. But, in 5 or 6 years, that curriculum's going to be something we're going to have to reassess again. So we need to start planning for that. Technology updates. Also with ESSER, we bought a lot of Chromebooks. That technology is not going to last forever. You're looking at 3 to 5 years on a lot of that as well. So we might be able to get more out of it. We tend to squeak by with a lot here and we do a lot with a little in Belgrade. And so, but these are things we need to keep in our forefront of our mind for costs coming up. If you're looking at the 4th elementary school, which you'll hear a presentation on that, we have $20 million in bonds that we can, we have $20 million in authority where we could issue bonds. Our taxpayers have not been taxed on that yet or anything, but if we were to issue those to start building that elementary school, that cost is another, for a taxpayer with a $600,000 home, that additional cost is about $115 a year for that taxpayer. So you add that on with the mill levy we just talked about, you're looking at about $125,000 increase in property taxes for those taxpayers if we issued the bonds and if we ran and passed those 2 mill levies. So I just wanted you to have the full picture on kind of what that all looked like. Do you guys have any questions off the top of your head? Okay.
149,600, is that our max levy
That
to
gets
bring
us
us to
to-
max budget?
Yep.
Okay.
There is part of the STARS Act, and it doesn't go into effect in FY26, but it goes into effect in 27 is where, because we're in a high cost of living area, we could go above max by 6%. So we could ask for 106%. It comes with pluses and minuses because it's a voted levy as well. And so, you know that Bozeman's going to go for 106% and we'll go for 106%. Theirs will probably pass and ours won't. So we'll still look at that disparity in funding. So I don't know how that's going to shake out if that part of the bill stays the way that it is.
Okay, and as the STARS Act puts money back in, does that go away eventually?
No, No,
Never,
it
never
stays-
sunsets unless somebody gets tired of it, legislature.
unless the legislative process changes it over the years. But right now, it's we have to be at 62% of average salary next year, and by 2030, it has to be up to 70%. Our base has to be 70% of our average. So it phases it in over time and at like 2% every year until 2030, and then we have to be at 70%. So I don't see it going away. I see it maybe morphing through the next legislative session, but I don't see it going away right now the way that it is.
They have somewhere specific they're pulling that from or just general budget?
They have a
Magic.
surplus in the general fund that they're pulling it from right now. And then there's another funding source through the GTB with I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I'll get you that information. There's another funding source that if they max out this area, then that money goes back in to help fund this.
Okay, and then as we're talking about all this and we're thinking about insurance increases and whatever else, and we're considering issuing bonds, what can we anticipate for a levy to start up a new school? Because it sounds nice that we issue bond, but it strikes me there was a huge operational gap when Gallatin opened.
It was because they were duplicating efforts in a lot of areas that they weren't having to duplicate when they only had one high school. So we'll have some things that we'll have to increase, but teachers and for instance, you pull fifth grade out of the middle school and you separate out some of our other grade levels, kindergarten first all the way up. Those teachers would just shift to another school. So it wouldn't be an added expense. You're going to have added expenses in custodial, probably. You'll have added, utility costs, things like that. But the majority of it, you will have one less principal you'll need at the middle school that you could move over to the elementary school, things like that. We won't have the duplication like they had to have because they had this huge high school and then they split it and had duplicate costs but had the same amount of funding.
Okay.
We will have some increased operating costs. I'm not going to say there's not going to be any, but I don't see it being as impactful as what they went through in Bozeman with the addition of Gallatin High.
Okay.
So we could anticipate a secretary and nursing for health aid support for sure would be additional.
Grounds, custodial.
Mhm. Yeah.
We need to know what that number was before we decide if we're building a school.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have to decide that tonight, so we'll get all that information to you. So, yep.
Any other questions? Cool.
Thanks, Carrie. Moving on to the board report. Does anyone have anything, anyone on the board have anything they'd like to talk about?
Just a little follow-up with Dee Dee's thing around the going up to Helena, visiting with the legislature. And it was actually quite a bit, for me, it was very start from the beginning. I mean, I got immersed with things that I hadn't really had much exposure to. Montana School Board Association being the biggest overall set of information. And then we got to see some of the legislatures although there were a lot of people there, and we did meet. I met several of the senators, but honestly, it was probably more about the School Board Association than it was about the legislators. And for me, it was just an initial exposure. So I'm looking forward to some point in time going back and getting a little bit more in depth with the legislature.
Anybody else? Sounds good. Looks like we'll move on to principals, elementary. Ashley.
All right. Hi there. I don't have a whole lot to report. I know we talked a little bit about math in our board report, but we just finished up our fast bridge testing for winter. And so all 3 elementary schools are kind of going through that. And then Monday we have a PD for math specifically for teachers who will be here. So we're looking forward to kind of diving into all of that and making some decisions based on our data. So any questions? Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Middle school, Julie.
Good evening, everyone. Basically, it's the same thing. We submitted all of our data to Trey to submit to you. If you have questions regarding any of that, please let me know if you have anything tonight. Also, we finished up all of our fast bridge testing, and so we'll be looking at all that data, which we started already, and so we'll have more to report on as far as that goes. Lots of activities for sure this time of year with February and scheduling and all the things that come along with the spring.
Questions? Thanks, Julie.
Yep.
And last but not least, high school, Shanna.
Thanks, Steve. Good evening, everyone. Kind of the same as Ashley and Julie. We are done with our math goals, or they're in progress now. That was in the board report. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. I would like to say it's been a collaborative effort with Matt in our math. Matt and Aaron Nolte. They have worked tirelessly with the math department in that for us to have some pretty targeted goals and some good direction forward. So I'm proud of our work on that. Questions for me on the, and same as Julie, it is busy. We have everything from Coffee House Live, our band concert coming up. We have Gallatin Trades Night coming up. It's busy with registration. But it's an exciting time. The students were excited to get registered today. And I think Piper said it best, a little nerve-wracking too. So it's a good time.
Talk about the anticipated changes in math.
Sure. I'll have Matt come up and talk about that. That's really at the core of this, because that's what the data showed us is our geometry. There were deficiencies in our geometry skills from the ACT test scores as well as the STAR test scores. So I wholeheartedly support this.
Yeah, we met with Aaron Nolte, math department head. And the idea was to switch back from the integrated math model to the more traditional model. There's a lot of different reasons for that. Students that are transferring into Belgrade, especially all the AA schools, use the traditional model, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and so forth. And when they transfer in here and we're trying to figure out where they fit in the integrated model, it's causing some issues there. Geometry, our scores are lower on our standardized testing and our STAR testing. So having a designated geometry class will help with that. And then just preparing them, I think, a little bit better for higher ed and the track that goes back to the traditional model. So that was the discussion. There's some data that they have that backs up the idea to move back to the traditional model. It's not going to cost us anything. They can use the materials and online resources that they have now. We'll create some year-long context to map out the standards and then start running with it. Second to that is been talking to Julie, and she's very supportive of this, down into the middle school, doing the advanced track down there, starting in 6th grade instead of 7th grade. And the idea would be 8th grade advanced track would be an Algebra 1 class. So students could, I guess, essentially step into high school and jump right into geometry as a freshman if they took Algebra 1 as a 8th grader. Still some things to work out that if we can get them high school credit for it would be great. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good things with the math program that we're looking to revamp a little bit and make it more specific.
Any questions for Matt? I was curious how long we've had integrated math versus the traditional model.
Roughly 8 years, maybe. The idea to be a phased-in approach, so the freshmen coming in this fall would take Algebra 1. The kids that are on the integrated model would stay on that integrated model until it's phased out.
What is integrated math exactly?
Integrated is taking a lot of different concepts and kind of combining them into one class. The traditional model is much more specific and intentional. So I guess in the integrated model, some subjects, some specific targets can get lost in the shuffle because you're moving the pacing and all of that can be a little different.
And when do you anticipate this change will happen? Will this
Next
begin
fall to
next
start
fall?
with,
Okay, thank you.
with the 8th graders coming in.
Said this change, was a change in our performance on that from the year before, or has it been something that we've seen over time?
I think it's, Aaron, how long has this been on your radar over time? Yeah. So since post-COVID, so it's something they've been tracking. Steve, you got a question?
The middle school looked like I think, if I recall correctly, we had trouble or lower scores in 5th grade and 8th grade, and then it shifted back to 5th grade and 7th grade. Did 7th grade slip notably and 8th grade still remain slipped, or did they flip flop for some reason?
On MAST or SBAC?
Math. I think it seemed like in the past it's been, I recall 5th grade and 8th grade being. So that just seems odd. It went back to 7th. Do we? It can be a what? I'm sorry.
I have one more question about
Sure.
that. So, how's your participation? What percentage of the population of the high school is taking math?
There's 3 credits of math required for graduation. And so most likely that those not taking a math class are seniors. So some of our seniors are. So it's a high percentage in a math class.
Yep. So in the conventional, it'd be algebra.
Correct. And then as a senior, you would have an additional option for a math class when you were a senior.
Then AP math.
We have AP calculus, AP statistics.
One credit is one semester, is that correct?
A semester is half a credit.
Half a credit, okay. Any other questions? Oh, yes, Toby, I believe you're here too. Come on up.
Good evening. In January, I went to the MHSA convention, and Brian Michelotti, the executive director of the Montana High School Association, was giving a presentation, and 2 slides that came up were about the drop in enrollment that they're seeing in female participation in sports, specifically basketball. So first he talked about the lack of participation of females, and then he pinpointed directly at, basketball is one of the main ones that we're seeing it in right now. So in the board report you have there was all the information. I also have the slides that were presented. And so Mr. Michelotti just said, this is what some things that I'd like to see you guys do. One of it's just stop specialization. Let's stop doing one sport. Let's get multi-sport athletes. Gave some interesting stats out there. So I just wanted to bring this to light, that it is an ongoing issue, that it's not, a few select schools around the state. They're seeing it everywhere. Does anyone have any questions on the information provided?
What are the other sports you think will be, or I guess girls are interested in other sports like wrestling is one, flag football. Are those the 2 main sports that they're shifting towards?
Volleyball is really huge across all high schools. Most high schools are fielding 2 freshman teams and then cutting kids as well to field those 2 freshman teams. So they are seeing quite a increase in volleyball for whatever reason. When I say for whatever reason, we don't know. We don't know why it's volleyball all of a sudden, but everything else, and not that volleyball's sucking all the girls away to volleyball, it's just really increasing, which is what we want to see. And then the other sports are just, because they're even different seasons, are not as affluent in terms of being prosperous. We are seeing girls wrestling starting to really increase around the state, just the numbers. Our team is growing from 7 to 14 this year. And a lot of it's, seeing the divisionals at Gallatin this last weekend, there's a lot of girls walking around, and the talk is to possibly create their own divisional tournament because the high schools can't have 2 giant divisional tournaments, boys and girls. So wrestling's really on the rise.
Any questions for Toby? All right. Thanks, Toby.
Yep. Thank you.
And it looks like our final number 6, school nutrition with Rebecca.
So what we're going to do here is give you our mid-year report. We're halfway through the school year, and we are happy to report we're doing very well. There. How do I get rid of that, Carrie? Okay, and then back here. Hi. As most of you know, my name is Rebecca Ankney, and I am the new director of school nutrition. And that's not going to work. I'll do this. Last summer, when you hired me, the goal was to increase participation in school meals. If we can increase participation in school meals, we can do more things, offer more programs, get out into the schools, teach more kids about nutrition, just kind of do. But in order to do that, there's some things that needed to happen this school year. One is to build staff at all schools, also to upgrade our menus and our selections at all schools, grow our reputation, and optimize the budget with doing more scratch cooking, less purchased products, and more donated products, like the Little Belt cattle. Here's where we started out. At the high school, we were short people. At the middle school, we were short people. The blue is where we are now. Orange is where we started this school year. So that is the increase in the number of staff members we've been able to hire this year. We began the school year with 9 vacancies out of 31. It was tough. A very tough start to this school year. But we've done great hiring. We've hired some fantastic people. We did some really targeted going after some, especially in the elementary schools. Those, you might have heard the radio ad about, so last kid's gone off to school, here you are sitting at home, what are you going to do with yourself? Come to work with us. So out of the 8 people that we've hired so far, I think 4 of them are kindergarten parents. So hopefully they'll be with us a long time. Building staff at schools is not just about hiring bodies. It's about hiring the right bodies and making the people that we have feel empowered, so that they'll stay, so they'll grow, so that we'll have better programs. Some of the things that we've done this year, my first chat with each kitchen was introducing myself to them. They'd known me as their clerk for a number of years, and this is me in a whole new light. They didn't know my background. They didn't know how much experience I had in business. They just, it was seeing me in a new light and telling them, here's what we're going to do. We're going to grow this program. Currently, we're doing chats. I am doing chats with each employee one-on-one to find out, where are we now? What are your goals? What do you need? How can we help you? Where do you want to grow? We're doing morale boosters quarterly. The Fall Festival Parade float was a lot of fun. We'd never done anything like that before. Quarterly, you wouldn't think this is a big deal, but it is. So quarterly, staff is getting new t-shirts and aprons. We're giving everybody the work shoes that they need to work, and hopefully saving some in workers' comp. Training. In addition to the district and the OPI training that's mandatory, we are rotating through schools so that they can share ideas and see how other people do things. We're encouraging managers to share their knowledge. We have quite a few people who don't cook. So our managers are now teaching their staff to cook. So we've got people using tilt skillets and starting to bake and really getting in there and doing what it is we're supposed to do instead of where we were post-COVID, where we're just warming up packages. So we're actually starting to cook. We're also developing a training curriculum using the Institute of Child Nutrition. Some of the biggest interest in these curriculums, in these classes are things that, might not excite you, but they just really jazz us, like knife skills or kitchen math or, so it's pretty cool. The other thing that we're trying to do is foster pride in the workplace. Be very, very proud of where you work, who you are, who you represent. So, meals sold. What we're doing is making a change. So you can see here, meals sold, blue is current as of the end of January. And we're seeing an increase in meals sold lunches across the board. Every school has increased the number of lunches with that short staff. And being fully staffed, you can just imagine what we can do to these numbers. The target is aggressive. We knew it was aggressive when we said it. It's 40% at the high school, 60%. 60% of all students eating hot lunch at the middle school and the elementary schools. It's aggressive. But we can do it. We know we can do it. Breakfast is a challenge. Breakfast at the high school, and I'll show you why in just a second, but breakfast at the high school and breakfast at the middle school, they're just killing it. I mean, they really are. If you've not been to Donut Day, right? If you've not been to Donut Day at the high school, you really need to go visit Donut Day. Breakfast at the elementary schools is decreasing, and it's a concern. We think we have some ideas about why. We don't know how to fix it, but we will. We will fix it. So here's where we are. We've built the staff at all schools. Now we're going to upgrade menus and selections across the school. The participation I just showed you is based upon school meals. Sales includes a la carte items. So sales at the high school are up $27,000 from same time last year. Sales at the middle school up $30,000, same time last year. Compared to the numbers that Carrie throws around, it seems really small, but it's big. It's pretty big. Managers are meeting monthly. The high school, middle school managers meet. The elementary school managers meet. They're working collaboratively where it used to be 5 individual businesses. And now they're starting to see that they're all, in the same group. High school's leading the way. Really innovative in their breakfast choices, innovative in their lunches and the number of alternates that they offer. If we can get staffing up at the middle school, we can replicate the innovations that high school's making at the middle school level. And then, as I said, all schools are increasing their scratch baking. Everybody's making something scratch for Valentine's Day this week. So this is what our meals are looking like. On the left, you have high school donut day. If you can see all the way in the back, there's a plate with a donut, some hash browns, yogurt, fruit juices, 2 different kinds of fruit juices, and then all of this fresh fruit. And that's high school breakfast on donut day. Down here, we have a middle school lunch one day when it was beef olé. We do offer versus serve, which means that the kids go through a line and they serve themselves and they decide what they want to select. So this picture, this tray, is if a middle school student took everything that was offered that day. Not a bad looking lunch. We're taking pride in what we do. These are pictures from the lunch lady float. And we're going to optimize the budget, more scratch cooking and more donated products. We already talked about Little Belt and their 1,000 pounds of beef. Last year, we had a grant to use for local products, and it was used all for local beef from Bettis families. And then on the left-hand side at the bottom, that's the amount year to date that we have received in government food. Any questions on government food? We're going to go back up here. When you look at this lunch tray, we paid for the milk. We paid for the salad mix that's underneath that homemade ranch dressing. It's Belgrade Ranch, it's the best. We paid for the pudding. We paid for the Fritos, the corn, the apple, the celery, the peanut butter, the tomatoes, vegetables, the cauliflower, and all of the ingredients that went into beef olé, which is like a chili stew. All of those are USDA commodity foods. So the only things on the tray that we are out of pocket for are the milk, the lettuce, the pudding, and Fritos. So that's the power of commodities fruit. More scratch cooking. This is what it takes to make 120 pounds of scalloped potatoes and ham. They put it into, if you've never seen them, they put them into these big cook skillets about this big. I can't reach the back of it. And they stir it with a canoe paddle. So that's what I'm talking about. Instead of thawing out a frozen product, we're cooking. Middle school made gummy worm cake for Halloween. If you've not eaten lunch at the high school, I would highly recommend it. On the left is the berry and chicken salad, my personal favorite, with fresh berries and a blueberry pomegranate vinaigrette. On the right is a chef salad. It's called the pizza salad. It has salami, a lot of different vegetables, and as I mentioned before, the Belgrade Ranch is the best ranch. So, lunch ladies rock. Any questions about what we're serving, what we're doing?
Yeah.
I just want to say that was incredibly impressive. And it's awesome to see the changes that you've made in the short amount of time that you've been in this role. But it's obvious impact that you're having. So thank you.
Holy. Okay, but I'm not done yet. There's just a little bit more. That, I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask that.
Golly, I said no. Trey said no. You have to talk about it. So let's talk about debt. It's not as bad as it was, and it's certainly not as bad as some other districts. Right now, we have about $25,000 in debt that's left over from last year and the year before and the year before and the year before. We have about $23,000 in the Angel Fund. So at some point, we could take care of that old debt and start fresh with just what are we going to do for new debt from this year only. In order to do that, we've been working with IT and the principals for parent outreach based upon board policy 8205, where the principals would be contacting parents with debt between $30 and $100. And when you break it down by school, it's not a huge task. It might be 10, 15 families that you're reaching out to. over $100 would be Carrie and Gray reaching out to those families. We're getting a lot of insight from the principals, from counselors on the families that are in those groups that are in trouble, where there's something else going on and they might need a little extra help. When I said we're not as bad as other schools, Bozeman pays off their debt twice a year. In December, they pay off all school debt with donations in their angel fund. At the end of the year, they take whatever's left in their angel fund, pay off the rest of the debt, and then pay off the balance of the debt from the general fund. So Billings pays off all negative balances twice a year, all from donations. They have a very robust angel fund campaign. Helena pays off balances from donations only upon request from principals. They don't do any collection efforts like we do. They don't talk to the kids in debt. They just, or the families in debt, they just ignore it. And I don't know how you can do that, but they do. So that's where we are with that. It's better than it used to be. We ended 2023, 80-something thousand in debt. I might also add that this year we lost almost 300 students from the free and reduced rolls. It hurt. It hurt a lot. Of this debt, almost 8,000 of it is from kids that were free last year. Medicaid. So last year we had students eligible for free and reduced based upon Medicaid, and that ended with last school year. That was pandemic Medicaid being extended, and so that was how many students were dropped from the Medicaid rolls in our district.
How does the Angel Fund work? How does the Angel Fund work, and where would someone make a donation to it?
Where you make a donation to it right now is kind of in flux. There's been a button on the webpage that says donate, but we're in the process of changing that software. So that's not where you would donate right now until that is fixed or changed to the new software. Right now, you would make a donation just by presenting money to the district admin office. We get checks through the mail. We get donations from local businesses. Then principals, counselors, me, we make suggestions for how we can use those angel funds. Those are vetted by Carrie and Trey. If Carrie and Trey approve it, then we wipe out those balances.
All right. Any other questions for Rebecca? Thanks for the detailed breakdown.
That was fun. Mid-year report. That means I don't have to see you again until July.
Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Should we begin with the motion?
Motion to adopt. Consent agenda 1-6 was that board pack and authorize necessary actions for these items, include the same.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment? Seeing none, comes back to the board. Any board comment? Looks good. All in favor of approving the consent agenda as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Joanne? Joanne, you're muted. Even though it doesn't matter, it passes.
Aye. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect.
You said aye, is that correct?
Aye, yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes 7-0. New business, Thanksgiving update and letter. Nicole and Dee Dee. Good to see you back, Nicole.
Hello.
My name's Nicole Blunt. I am here to update you guys on the Thanksgiving meal you guys let us do again last year. So we ended up with our count, we had 597 meals. 101 of those were in person. So we open up the commons area at the high school and people can come in and sit down. This year we did get a lot of clothing donations. And I think it was well received. We had a lot of people take a lot of donations. And then the rest we brought to the homeless liaison program. And she kept what she wanted and brought the rest to, I believe, Love Inc. 496 meals were served by delivery, and 135 of those went to the warming center in Bozeman. They were very appreciative for that. And we would like to continue this, and we thank you guys for supporting this. We feel like it's made a big impact on the community. We had to turn down volunteers once again this year, which was awesome. We saw a lot of the same faces, which is really cool. People thanked us for doing this again this year and stayed almost the entire, 3 hours. We had people in there, and it was really good to see everyone. And we thank you guys, and hopefully we'll see you this year volunteering.
Thanks, Nicole.
Yeah.
We all appreciate your dedication.
Thank you.
Up next, SMA presentation with Brian and Dee Dee.
Hey, everybody. We have a presentation coming up here that I think Carrie has. It's good to see everybody again. Charlie Franklin with SMA Architecture and Design, and Lee Elder also with SMA Architecture and Design. We are here tonight to give you an update of the work we've made on programming and planning for the 4th elementary school. All right. We also have a handy report that we will pass out after the presentation, but so you can kind of see a full picture of what we've been up to for the last couple months. So a lot of work has gone into where we're at today. This is kind of a culmination of the early phase of design where we look at the programming, what goes into the school, as well as we've been looking at the site of the new elementary school. So let's see. So our agenda, the next slide there, obviously just did some introductions, progress review. We'll go through a little bit of what we've been doing, and then we'll look at some recommended site plans and recommended area diagrams for a new elementary school. We can scoot past some of these pretty quick here. Is Dee Dee, are you running this now? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, oh boy. Okay. We have we're going to see if we can maybe connect to from Lee's iPad. We did have some updated slides, Dee Dee. Sorry about that.
AirPlay. See you.
Screen share work too.
I'm on the BSD, right?
Yeah, BSD44. So if you do this one, you can't see it. Yeah, hold on just a second. You got it, Dee Dee?
Yeah, I think it's all the same until we get a little bit further down. Yep, there we go. All right, thanks, Dee Dee. Sorry for that delay there. Rocky's seen all this, so it's okay that he left the room for a minute. So what has happened? We just wanted to do a quick recap so that everybody was aware of the amount of meetings and the amount of effort that's gone into the project so far. So we've had a number of meetings, gathering input from your staff, from a group of people that we building committee and programming committee that we put together that includes community members as well. So we're not just working in a vacuum. We're taking in as much information as we can from the community to put together kind of this programming. So we just wanted to kind of make sure everybody was aware that we've put together a lot of meetings and a lot of effort to come up with our recommendations. And what is going to happen next? So we're looking ahead. If you want to scoot one more up there, we're looking ahead at what's the timeline to design an elementary school based off of where we're at right now. So we'll go through the design phase where we have schematic design, and that's really where we're looking at the big picture of what goes into the building and making sure spaces align with the needs of the school and that they are arranged in proper ways. That's about an 8-week, and then design development, we start to build upon that and really nail down kind of the details of what goes into that design. And then construction documents is really where we're producing information for a contractor to build the project, and that usually takes the longest out of the 3 design phases, and that's about a 16-week effort. And then construction, we estimate at somewhere in the neighborhood of 16 months. But you'll see a kind of a timeline there. Like if we are starting here in February, kind of what that looks like, it would get us into position for bidding and permitting sometime in the fall, and potential anticipation of a start in the spring of 26, which would then give us the opportunity to open a school in the fall of 27. So that's a theoretical, look at the schedule and what could happen next. There's obviously a lot of parts and pieces that need to come together for all of that to happen. One of the things we really want to talk about is we're building this budget story, and we're understanding what these things. So you'll see this slide a few different times, and we'll fill in some of the bubbles. So some of the known costs, we have soft costs. Those are the costs for design fees, for permitting fees, for FF&E, for furniture, fixtures, equipment, those types of things that go into schools. We know that those are going to range about $2 million for this project. What we don't know and what we're working to find out, and we've put a lot of effort into starting to find out, is the infrastructure costs. So these are, we talked about this last time, these are things like hooking water up, bringing water in from the city of Belgrade to our site, and then being able to hook that up to the school, bringing sewer lines in as well, and then the road upgrades and pedestrian pathways that we would likely need to provide. So there's 2 different categories. We have an on-site infrastructure and an off-site infrastructure. The off-site infrastructure is things that are beyond the boundaries of just the elementary school site. These include the water and sewer beyond our site, as well as road improvements and pedestrian pathways to the school. So we're putting those into 2 different buckets, and then we have a bucket of what does it take to build an elementary school. And so there's really those different costs that we need to pay attention to. So if we move into the master site plan, you can see we're looking at how do we get water and sewer to our site here on Frank Road. And let's see here.
So there's,
if you want to jump in here, Lee, you can.
Yeah, this is showing essentially two kind of different options for the water line. And so when we get to, and in our deliverable book that we have, there's a couple different options. One is kind of a dead end water main, and that's the dark blue line right there. And then there's also a water loop, which is kind of for a future system. If this school is ever to go to 500 kids, that's what we would want to be bringing to the site. So we're looking at what that cost might be to incur to the project now versus later. So that's the light blue that kind of goes there midway. The green, as you can see, is going to be our sewer line, and that's going to be tying into the existing city infrastructure. So these are all, this is for just the elementary school. There may be some potential for, a future middle school or a high school to also tie into this. But right now we're looking at just the capacity for our 250 student school. If we go to the next slide here, as you guys saw last time, this is kind of our preferred site option. The high school in the way future along Thunder Road. We're planning our elementary school down in the southeast corner along Frank Road. And then we would have the middle school adjacent to it off of a future Weaver Lane.
And if you remember last time, we just kind of talked about the efficiencies of putting the elementary school on this corner. It's the closest that we can get, to Frank Road and that existing infrastructure. So this really makes the most sense from a first cost perspective.
So the current phase that we were in is ed specs in a programming/concept phase. And so while we do have this concept plan for our elementary school site, we still have the entire schematic design to really hone in exactly what the circulation looks like, where things are going to be at, the location of the elementary school, the play areas, the fields. None of this is exactly set in stone. This is just where we kind of got to at the end of this current process. You can see the white box there. That is the future elementary school. We'll dive into the programming kind of into our later slides. We've got the fields along the north. That is a current field and then a future field on the east side there. So we're looking at how this site can grow for the next phase, which would be the 500 student school. We've got our school bus drop off there on the west side of the site, and then the very long queuing up and around just to make sure that we have no impacts to Frank Road, and we have lots of room for parent drop off and pickup.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So one of the big things that we talked about kind of on the first slide with the infrastructure is there is the water lines and the sewer, and those are kind of the two big costs along with the pedestrian pathway all the way from Jackrabbit over to this site. So if we go to the next slide here, the on-site costs for all of the parking and the play fields, all of that is around $3.5 million. And then offsite infrastructure, this would be the water lines and the connection back to city infrastructure, since we are going to have to annex in. This is just under $3 million. So, we're already over $6 million just with the infrastructure. And so we're looking around a third of our project is infrastructure for this project. So our elementary school is now, the amount left over is kind of getting whittled down.
You have a question there?
Yeah. You've obviously been working with the city, and when we're estimating that 2.7, I assume.
Right.
Are we not going to get stuck with any roadway improvements to Frank Road, any widening, any?
Currently, we're actually have a update to the traffic impact study right now, and we're not really foreseeing any additional impacts. That all can change in the future. But right now, with only a 250 student school, it's there's going to be peak flows, but we're not. I don't know if Brian has any other additional update to it.
Just what you said,
Yeah.
we have a traffic engineer studying our current traffic impact study to update that per the request of City of Belgrade. And so that is in process. So we'll come back to you with that update.
Okay. All right. I got more, but I should be at a meeting, so
Yeah.
present.
So now we want to kind of dive into the elementary school and our area diagrams. So this is the program for the 250 student school. We do this in an Excel spreadsheet. We thought you guys might want to see it in a little bit more colorful bubbles. We also enjoy this version too. So the specialties that you can see here, we've got the library, we have a music, well, it's kind of more of a multi-collaboration room, and then some PE storage. We do not have a gym in this current 250 student school. We don't have, really the funds to kind of do something that big. Plus, it's kind of hard to scale a gym for only 250 students and then add on in the future. You can see we've got about 11 classroom pods. We have the full admin offices, our food service area. We do kind of have to size that kitchen up front. We can't really expand. So that is being sized for the 500 student school. We have building support. This is going to be all the mechanical room. We do have some resource spaces for the special education program, and we don't have any preschool here. In the future, we don't, we would want to see, let's see here next, if you can kind of see the next page there. We're also looking at what this school can be in phase 2 and how we can kind of grow and what we might be able to get away with in phase 1 and what's going to come in phase 2. So you can see this is the full capacity. We have the 8,000 square foot gym. We're double the amount of size of classrooms and a whole lot more special education rooms. And then we also add in the preschool. Any questions on program?
Are we designing up or out?
Both.
Right now, just with the program and concept stage, we are looking at both a single and a double. And definitely as when we dive into schematic design, that's where we're really kind of select a choice and paired with kind of, if we are going to go to the GCCM model, we can see what's going to be more cost effective for our future design.
We are, so we would have it would be a cafetornasium, basically. So, yeah, PE classes, before and after the lunch, and then the lunch in the middle.
Yeah. And that would be in the phase 1. Yeah.
So within our process, we took the program for phase 1 and we also the program for phase 2 as well. And in the next slide, we started to just do some space adjacency diagrams, what needs to be next to each other, how we can grow onto the school, and how future pieces can kind of connect in. So this is one of the selected space adjacency diagrams that we chose. And then in the next image, you can see how that kind of starts to form into a little bit of a building mass. And this is just one planned concept study within the deliverable. You guys can see there's a couple more iterations of this. We're planning on how the classrooms can be used at this scale for a full kindergarten through 5th grade. And then also how in the future, those classroom pods are still going to grow with a classroom. So instead of having kindergarten and 1st grade, that whole entire pod will be kindergarten in the future. Adding also the gym to the next phase and still just making it functional as we grow.
So you can see, right, here we are looking at a 2-level school scheme on this, where we would add, both directions vertically and horizontally in phase 2.
Then in the next slide here is what that preliminary concept looks like on the site and as it grows around.
Yeah, so making sure we preserve enough space that we can grow, for the 500 student, the ultimate build out. And then, providing flexibility to add play areas, to add sports fields. But really, we would do a lot of that upfront infrastructure, the parking, all of that kind of stuff we would want to put into place for phase 1. So that's separating the bus drop-offs and all of that, parent drop-off and providing all the parking in phase 1.
So with with the program for this current phase one school, we're at just under 34,000 square feet. We're using a ref number of $425 a square foot to get our estimated construction budget for just the school itself. And that's in the next slide, you can see that's under $14.5 million. And so we're currently seeing with the current budget that we're at a bit of a deficit. And while we can, in the future phase, look at, program versus infrastructure, we want to make sure that we're building the school that you guys want in the future.
Yeah, Dee Dee, if you slide up just a little bit, you can see that deficit number. Yep. So, I think it's important to note, right, that this planning a school for 250 kids achieves the goal of being able to pull fifth grade down into the elementary schools. And so I think that's one thing that we've been talking about a lot is that, while yeah, it'd be great to build a whole, 500 school all at once, there's incremental costs that happen when you do construction projects in phases, obviously. But as we're planning this, that's sort of one of the big goals that we could hopefully achieve with a 250 student school. Let's see, I think we just look a little bit more into kind of components in our last slide of kind of looking at this from a scaled perspective of, the costs that go into, that infrastructure with this first project at this new site that doesn't have those amenities already. It's not, we can't just plug it into, the city infrastructure like you would be able to in a town situation. So this kind of lays out, a little bit of a disproportionality of this first phase to get this new site in operation. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We have a book that summarizes and provides a lot more information on all of these decisions that we are going to leave with you all. And so you will know, and maybe it'll spark a ton of different questions. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. So we wanted to come back and give you an update.
Food service, building support your admin.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Appropriately.
Correct. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So when we look at sort of the square footage from going from a 250 to a 500 student school, you'll see that it's, and the slide that has maybe 3 or 4 back, DD, kind of shows, there's a small amount of admin space that gets added. Let's see, 2 or 3 more up there. Yeah. So the lighter boxes are what would be added in phase 2. So, things like admin and food service, those are sized, for the 500 school, the library size for the 500 school. So things that are core to the program it's hard to grow those when you add on. And so we'd be looking at more adding on classrooms, adding on the gym is a big proportion. A full size gym would be a big proportion of that add for phase 2.
Okay. Any further questions?
I'm trying to whittle them down because I have some, but it's not fair because probably the book covers a lot of it. So,
We will, there's another run at this later. When's the next scheduled dialogue about all of this?
In terms of a design meeting?
Yeah.
Or coming back to the board. We haven't set a time to come back. I think we would definitely come back during the schematic design phase, which is about 2 months. We could give, we could probably come back for 2 meetings or just 1 at the end. So, but.
Yeah, Yeah, I apologize. It's been a bad work semester, so. I did the sewer capacity and the water capacity, or sewer and water. Did I hear right? You said they're just science for this elementary, not for the whole complex build out?
Right now, the capacity that we've heard from the city is that we can only handle the 250. And in the phase, of course, we would be.
We're putting in the infrastructure for the future phases, just not using it because we're only allotted so many.
Right. They only have
units of waste.
capacity at the Flying J pump station for the 250 school.
Right.
And so we'd be looking at what's the upcharge or the cost to put in bigger mains and that kind of thing, since we're going to be there anyway. And it's sort of like, how do we plan for the future to handle, a bigger load?
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, we would need to kind of study that, but it's definitely something that we're looking at.
Yeah, so like the dead end water main, that's something that we can handle with a 250 student school, but it's not something that we would be able to kind of do with a 500 student school. So that additional loop really plays in there. That's the cost that we've done are the full extent with a full loop instead of just the dead end water main.
All right. And then could you guys, whoever has control, flip back to the schedule, the next step schedule or whatever, what comes next, I think?
Yeah.
They had a little,
There we go.
If we go to alternative delivery, what point in there do we bring on a contractor in your little bar chart?
As soon as possible is the right answer, but it would probably be, by the time we got them on board, it'd probably be around schematic design end and design development start.
Okay.
If we're able to get them on, right away, which is what we would recommend, because at the beginning of the design phase is when you can make the biggest, choices that make the biggest amount of impact to the budget are made really early in the project, if that makes sense. And as we continue to design and develop and, nail down exactly what the school is, it's harder to make bigger swings in budgets, if that makes sense. So we'd like to get them on as soon as we can so that we can really dial that in and then have them along to help us with that budget and set a target and hit the budget through the design phase of design development and construction documents. So.
And what happens with contractor on board? Because every contractor wants to get built out. If we run into a reality where we decide we want to get plans, but we don't want to build this year for whatever reason, taxpayer tolerance or enrollment.
I'm sure Brian can speak to that a little bit too, but my suggested method would be to actually hire them as a pre-construction services. So they would provide a service for pre-construction. Now that doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're going to, build the actual project. So there's some nuances there. I don't know if Brian can cover some of that in the next agenda item, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that brings us to our next agenda item, the alternative project delivery. To begin discussion on this, for a motion.
I move to support the alternative project delivery method for the 4th elementary school project.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's see, Brian and Dee Dee, did you want to speak about this?
I'll take it.
All right.
Yeah, so many of you are familiar with this process already, having deployed that for your most recent projects. And so that's being considered tonight for yourselves for this upcoming 4th elementary school project. Frank, just to address your question, which was a good one, regarding commitments to a possible contractor. I've written a draft for the solicitation already, and it would be customary. And in that current draft, what I've proposed is that you have no obligation beyond those pre-construction services to engage with construction in any way. Moreover, it describes that you could renegotiate and select a different CM. You could hard bid it. You could do whatever you want. And so there are numerous exit ramps that you as the owner could take should you choose for whatever reason to not pursue that capital project. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Kind of. Is it fair to the industry I think I've been on the contractor where you've been set on the sidelines for a year and it sucks and you win 18 other things and you're suddenly trying to juggle staff and still do right by your former client.
Sure.
How do we keep it fair to a contractor and to ourselves?
I think by explaining, as I have in the solicitation, that those are possibilities. So they're entering into this solicitation with eyes wide open, that's possible. That's, I think, the best we can do.
Okay. Negative impact our price a little bit, I would assume, but
Well, we'll see. There'd be a scoring rubric that includes fee and price. And so that would be up to them how they want to handle that.
Yep.
And then just to step back from that question is just to kind of give an overview of what we're talking about, right? So the Montana code allows for what we've called alternate project delivery, and that would be in comparison. And I think I've provided sort of a rundown in your board packet of the traditional delivery method, which, low bid, design, bid, build metric. And really, I, in preparation for this discussion, I was trying to think of any school districts or projects in Montana that have used that method, the traditional bidding, low bid method. And I really couldn't think of one except for one that I was involved with at the Montforton School 15 years ago. So whether it's Missoula or Helena or Great Falls or Billings or Bozeman or Belgrade, the alternate project delivery method has been the chosen delivery method. And I think for a lot of compelling reasons. In particular, maybe not the most important, but all these projects are budget critical. And what we're using right now is just a square foot cost number of $425 a foot. And that really doesn't inform the design process that we're about to embark on. As we go from the program, which is sort of a narrative explanation of what that school would be, and start to draw in the schematic and the design development stages, it would be my opinion and my recommendation that we're complementing that progress with real-time cost information from the contractors in this market. Now more than ever, the costing is taking wild swings, whether it's shortage of labor or material, delays in shipping, tariffs, whatever the case may be. These are all real-time implications to the project that I feel a certain responsibility to do what we can to stay in front of. And so by engaging with, we have a numerous field of really talented construction managers in this market to tap into that and bring them onto the team certainly mitigates to the best we're able those questions about cost that I think we would all agree are really important, especially when we're reviewing, even standing here today at a deficit, and what we can do about that, if anything. Additionally, alternate project delivery allows for preemptive planning by the contractor for sequencing and staging the construction work and how to do that most cost effectively and with less impact. And really where I'm heading with that is just the schedule critical nature of the project. And when we're embarking on a school project, we have to be open when the kids come in the fall, right? That has to be done. There's no plan B there. And so this is just another example of that kind of input now and team building that has delivered in our market and other regional markets here in Montana a lot of success. And so if you can't tell, I'm certainly advocating for alternate project delivery, which is why we requested putting that on the agenda tonight. And really, that process will take some time. We have to advertise, we have to solicit and interview, and then bring on board that member. And so while SMA will be proceeding with design, or excuse me, with schematic design, time is of the essence to bring that on should you choose to go that method. And so that kind of being a really high overview of what that is, I'd pause and certainly entertain any questions on any of that. Steve.
I seem to recall this same discussion when we did Story Creek. Is that correct?
Correct. So we did alternate project delivery for Story Creek for the renovation at Saddle Peak and at the high school.
And it was a positive experience, right? Everything worked well.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
So just so I heard you correctly, you would want the selection committee to be composed of all board members. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. That's
And
helpful.
it was, the last one had if you recall, was revoted several times. There's a lot of interest in it, so.
Sure. That's good. Good input. Other questions for me? I'll fill in the blank there for a moment. So what would happen next is, should you vote to approve alternate project delivery, we would be in this week's legal notification cycle that would start immediately. And so we would project that by, I think, March 7th, the responses to that solicitation would be due. And then beyond that, we would be meeting as a committee to score those replies and then scheduling interviews. And so just to kind of give you a snapshot of timing, that's kind of roughly what that looks like right now.
Okay. Did we have any public comment or questions for Brian before I forget? And I guess it's the last chance for any board comment or questions.
Do you have a selection metric that you have used successfully in the past that you will distribute to us?
Yeah, I shared a draft with Carrie and Dee Dee today of the solicitation, and I've modeled the scoring rubric using what I would consider to be the gold standard in Montana, and that's state A&E's methodology. And so I've made some adjustments to make it Belgrade specific, but I would welcome any input on that. Like I said, they have a draft of that as of this morning, and so feel free to give me some input as you see fit.
Thank you.
All right. Guess that brings it back to a vote. All in favor of approving the alternative project delivery method for the 4th elementary school, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I guess I'll ask Joanne.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
So we have upcoming here 3 requests for approval for overnight trips. I was informed as a board, we can actually choose to approve all 3 of these at once, unless a specific board member has questions they'd like to ask about any of these trips.
Mary Ellen always likes to ask questions.
And it's okay, Mary Ellen, if you do want to, but
I have is that who's paying for it? They're gonna self-finance all of these, if they're
All that's
self-financing.
in here.
yeah.
Yep. The only question I had.
Can you turn on your mic?
The question that I have is on the overnight trip to Washington DC and they're going to New York, they're packing so much in. Is that person here?
My kid did it last year or 2 years ago and loved it. Did both, did New York and DC.
Mine too. My youngest did it as well. It was actually fabulous because she was tired for like a week afterwards. So I guess other than that, did you have any questions for the 3? Okay. Frank, or I guess I'll ask Joanne too, since she's online. Did you have any specific questions you wanted to ask? If not, we'll just wrap all 3 of these up and vote on it at once.
Nothing of consequence.
No
Okay.
questions for me.
Perfect. So does somebody want to just give us a motion that,
I move to approve the 8th grade overnight out-of-state field trip to Washington DC, May 6th through the 10th in 2025. And the out-of-country Europe field trip of March of 2026. And the out-of-country field trip to Ecuador and the Galapagos Islands in June of 2026.
I second it.
we have a motion and a second. Do we have any public questions or comment on these? Seeing none, it comes back to the board. Any further board question or comment? Comes back to a vote. All in favor of approving the 3 trips, say aye.
Aye.
Joanne? For the record?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you all for coming and sticking through this meeting. We're getting much more efficient at this in my 6th year. Okay, transportation route change.
Good evening. We had a bus that was in an accident January 9th, and we've been using a different bus to provide service for those kids. So bus 60 or 0260 will replace 1892.
Okay, do we have a motion to begin?
I move to assign bus 260 to replace 1892 for the high school route for effective January 9th, 2025.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any public comment or questions? Comes back to the board. Any board question or comment?
Question for Scott. The bus 1892 was how old? The one that got.
It was a 2018 bus.
And
So that's what
how
the first
old
number
is the one we're putting on?
Well, I guess it'd be 23 years old.
It's 23 years old.
It's a 02, yes.
I had a question also, just curiosity, the highway patrol has to approve return to service? They're
Yes.
charged with that by state statute or something?
Yes.
Okay. What was the damage, just out of curiosity?
Bus got T-boned and it was right in the cargo area. It's about 32,000. So
Ooh.
we're waiting for insurance to see if that 18 bus is worth $32,000.
I'll be darned. Okay.
And what do you do with that bus that was damaged?
Right now it's collecting snow. And we're waiting for the insurance company to tell us if that bus is worth $32,000 or more. So that we can get repaired.
Fairly certain it's worth that?
Possibly.
2018?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions for Scott?
Is that our insurance or their insurance?
I guess that's still debatable. Right now it's ours. We've asked for the black box to be recorded or to be harvested on the vehicle, and it has. And our insurance company has hired an attorney to look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Typically, our insurance company would pay for it and then they fight behind the scenes.
And raise our rates.
Yeah.
Put that in your budget.
All right, comes back to a vote. All in favor of approving the transportation route change, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Joanne?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Oh, I guess that's 7. That motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. MOU between the Belgrade School District and Association of Belgrade Classified.
I make the motion to approve the MOU between Belgrade School District number 44 and the Association of Belgrade Classified ABC effectively January 7th, 2025 through June 30th, 2025. Whereas paraprofessionals assigned to the classroom that are led by a virtual teacher will receive an additional $4 an hour for grade 1 paraprofessionals and $1.50 an hour for grade 2 paraprofessionals, whereas the Director of Student Achievement Special Programs and the Superintendent retain final decision-making authority regarding which paraprofessional position qualify for the virtual coverage pay under this provisional per policy number 5210.
Well done. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Thomas, did you want to elaborate on this at all?
Yes, thank you, board. So ultimately, with the virtual teaching, there's been a change in working conditions for our paraprofessionals. So we've met with the union and discussed a wage that'll work through the rest of the year, effective January, last board meeting. And this is the next steps of the process. I know it's.
Can you clarify for me what's the difference between a grade 1 paraprofessional and a grade 2?
I can, in short terms, the grade 1 is non-special ed paras and grade 2 is special ed paras. They have that added responsibility. So they're already getting $2.50 more for being in that grade 2. So it took into effect of That's the reason why the $1.50 is there instead of an additional $4. Because in each grade 1 and then grade 2 is an additional $2.50 each step. So,
What's the difference in duties?
so there's quite a big difference going into the grade 2.
With the virtual?
With the virtual, so that just became, so $4 overall was kind of what was discussed and agreed upon. And then having, since that difference of $2.50 was the difference between grades, that's what the $1.50 is where it came up.
So,
Am I making sense?
yeah, so with the virtual, the reason why we wanted to increase it is because we have a virtual tier. We have a virtual para there, and there isn't a
virtual teacher.
a teacher. There isn't an adult in the room for classroom management, getting the students to and from the therapies or the classroom. There's some additional paperwork that has to be done and handed in as far as like the IEPs. So they're taking on some more responsibility that if we had the an actual teacher or the therapist in the room, they wouldn't have to incur those extra duties. So that's why we were.
So does the para 1 do this stuff, or does it para 2 take more responsibility?
So the difference between grade 1 and grade 2 with paras. So grade 2 are paras that work in our life skills rooms, and there's those additional responsibilities are that there could be changing or feeding and that kind of stuff. Okay.
Thanks.
I have a question. So by doing the $4 and the $1.50, then we're putting them both at the same,
When they're in this virtual classroom, yes, we're putting them,
even though the one has the more responsibility?
but they're already making $2.50 more.
But they also have more responsibilities? Is that correct?
That's what Mary Ellen was asking, like,
Yeah.
as far as the actual virtual classroom, are they doing both the same responsibilities, or is the para 2 there and doing extra during the virtual? That's what Mary Ellen was asking.
Yeah, I was asking who was in charge.
Yeah. So they're both performing the same duties in a virtual classroom setting.
And that's why they'll be both making that same wage.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Good. Thank you for the
Sorry.
clarification. No, you're good.
Operational question, how many of these are classes versus how many are therapy counseling things? Like
So
special ed
currently we
versus
have-
a virtual class with,
Right, so
for calc.
currently we have 2 virtual special education teachers, one at the high school and one at the elementary school. And we have 4 virtual speech and language pathologists.
Okay, and no other classes at all? Okay.
No. Which hired real people.
Yeah, that'd be better than the virtual. Get that.
Yeah, and this is why it's kind of
People.
going into negotiations, and hopefully we can, start, it sunsets in June at the end of the school year, so that hopefully we can plan for next year.
Right, and then this would apply, I guess if it's gonna sunset, we don't have it applying to anything else ever.
Nope, it'll have to be bargained.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other board questions? Did we have any public questions? No? Okay. Seeing none, it comes back to the board for a vote. All in favor of approving the MOU between Belgrade School District 44 and Association of Belgrade Classified, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
And thank you for reworking that and getting the right policy in there.
All right, trustee resolution calling for an election. Can we have a motion to begin?
I move to adopt the trustee resolution calling for an election on May 6th, 2025.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. I don't think there's anything to explain here, is there, Dee Dee?
So I think that obviously we need to call for an election because there will be trustees who are up for a reelection, right? So we have to call for an election. I think the question is whether we also call for the levies for that part of it.
But we call for the election, the trustees resolution first.
Correct.
And then we have to come back and do another one for the levy.
So you would call for one election today, and that can include just the trustees, or it can include the trustees plus the levies. But before that happens, there will be another vote that says this is the language we're putting on. So you have an out, right? If you think you want to move forward with levies, the right thing to do would be to call for them in the election today. And then we could just not finish that part of it
So you
later.
want me to amend the motion?
No, you called for an election, and our election resolution that's in there has trustee and levies in there. And also in that resolution, you give me permission to cancel any portion of the election if you guys decide not to. But this resolution has to be passed by February 25th. Yeah, in order to meet the legalities of the election law. So I will send this to the county election office as soon as it's approved. They will know we're running an election. They'll start on their side getting things going. If we decide in March that we're not running a mill levy, I'll call them and say, we're canceling that portion of the election, and it doesn't require you guys to have another meeting and do a bunch of other stuff. So.
But if you do decide to run it, then you will need to have a meeting to call for the amount and the wording on that's going to be on the ballot.
So you guys will have to decide on an amount at the March 10th meeting because they have to get ballots printed and do all of that work. And we have spring break in there and all that fun stuff. So March 10th will be a big meeting for decisions.
And we have 4 trustees,
Yes.
Dear God.
and they're all going to be 3-year terms, or do
No.
we have some that are up?
One is
The Joanne's position is just a 1-year term because Nicole still had 1 year left on her term. And so that one will just be for 1 and the other 3 are for 3, which is the normal cycle for those 3 positions. Usually we have 2, 2, and 3.
Does Joanne have to go for the 1 year? She can't.
No.
She could go for anyone that she wants. It's up to you guys. It depends like how you guys all work it out between you. But whenever the people run, they have to decide ahead of time.
Pardon me?
Like they do have to decide ahead of time if they're running for the 1 year or 3 years. So I am accepting that paperwork until March 27th for those of you who are looking to rerun for the board.
And you don't have to get people to sign off on you anymore.
No, you used to have to get signatures from the community, but you don't anymore. And the sooner, if you decide you want to run, the sooner you do, the better. So the election office has your name and can start building ballots. Hint, hint.
Okie dokie.
I thought about it.
Yep. 5 minutes.
Yep. No.
Also, that paperwork says it requires a notary or the election administrator to sign off. So if you're going to return it directly to me, you can just bring it in. You don't have to get it notarized.
Okay.
For anybody who wants to refile for election.
Can you confirm that Joe heard that?
Joanne, we just wanted to make sure you understood all of that, heard it.
Yeah, I actually talked to Carrie directly, so because I had a few questions. So yeah, I'm good.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's bring it back to a vote. No?
Is there any reason not to do the 149 now? Is anybody gonna not maximum recommend after watching the budget thing that we go 149 for levy? I think we have to go out for it personally. Is there any reason not to finalize that, get it on there tonight so we don't have to talk about it again?
Well, we don't know that we want to go for 149 because
Isn't that the purpose of the Wednesday meeting?
we want to wait until the legislature.
Yeah, I guess they could tell us we could do 106%.
No, not this.
They could change a lot of, I mean, we just don't know.
Yeah. we don't know.
What they'll do. I would wait as long as until March 10th to make the final decision on the amount.
That's fine.
Just because we don't know. Hopefully we'll know soon. Preliminary budget data sheets from OPI are supposed to come out March 1st. They'll have everything in there that's been passed up until that time, hopefully. The STARS Act, I don't think is going to make it by March 1st to get completely approved. So that one probably won't be in, but I think House Bill 15, which is that 3% increase, should be included in those preliminary budget data sheets, which will give us really good numbers. Because the estimations I did were based off of using the fall A and B being the same for fall and spring, and we don't have those final numbers yet. So that number might change some more.
Did you say the last day was?
March 20, it's a Thursday. It's the last Thursday in March, like March 27th, maybe?
We have to have it
Oh.
established at the March meeting.
Yeah.
It's March 10th.
The amount for the mill levy has to be done by March 10th.
12.
But 12th is when I have to get it to the county, so. The 10th.
Mhm. So it's on the agenda for the 10th.
Yep. So be ready.
All right. Anything else? All in favor of approving the resolution calling for an election on May 6th, say aye.
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 Hi.
Motion passes 7-0. Revisions to policy 1520, board and staff communications.
I move to adopt the recommended revisions of policy 1520, board staff communication.
We have a motion and a second. Dee Dee, did you want to talk about this? There's really not much to say.
Yeah, the board approved the MTSBA model policy last year, but it has some pretty restrictive language about having to get permission from the full board and the superintendent prior to visiting schools. And you want to be in schools, the schools want you to be there. There's language in there saying, we know that it's not supervisory or, that the purpose is to have you be aware of what's going on in the schools and be able to ask questions. So the new language would just ask that the trustees make arrangements directly with the building principals for visitations.
Okay. I thought it was put very eloquently. Any public comment? Any board question or comment?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I just wonder how this slipped by me. All in favor of approving the revisions to policy 1520, say aye.
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 Motion passes 7-0. Revisions to policy 3110, entrance placement and transfer.
Make a motion to adopt the revisions to policy 3110, entrance placement and transfer.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Dee Dee, did you want to comment on this?
Sure. So we have most of this policy already in place. The section that was added, so the green section, is to address students who fall into extenuating circumstance categories, including 19-year-old students who are requesting to attend school and students with disabilities who are at least 3 years old or who are 19 to 21 years old. The policy just better defines our criteria for acceptance of those students. 19-year-old students would need to be a resident of the district. They have to be able to graduate within the semester or the year that they're given the extra time. So it's not meant for students who, won't graduate. I think those were the big differences.
Right.
Do we actually have an issue with this, or are we solving a problem that doesn't exist
We do have requests for enrollment.
for 18-year-old that graduated, wants to come back to high school? Missed prom?
Or 18-year-old who did not
Oh,
graduate.
okay.
didn't graduate.
All right. Yeah.
It's a requirement. It's just that
Misunderstood.
we're not
That
as.
makes more sense.
Yeah, there you go.
Glad the news is gone. I've missed a lot.
Dee Dee, we don't get money from an
No.
A&B for a 19-year-old. So we just are paying for the education.
But we still have to approve it,
So
right?
that's part of why, yeah, we have to approve it. It has to be extenuating circumstances. There has to be, there has to be a good reason why, and the fact that they could graduate if they're that close.
We as the board though, does that come back to us? I seem to recall a similar situation where we did this a couple of years ago. Or is this a set that eliminates that before it gets to us, or it gives you still have the ability to?
No, the trustees have to do it.
I guess I didn't see that language in there. I assumed it
It's
would
there.
come back
The
to us.
trustees- The trustees, the administration shall include, but the trustees may also admit an individual. Who's graduated from high
Okay.
school, but is not yet 19.
Or did read that right.
Okay. You good?
No, but go ahead.
Do you have another?
No. I was belittled enough. I'm good.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Any public comment? Comes back to the board. All in favor of, excuse me. Just lost my place. All in favor of approving revisions to policy 3110, entrance, placement, and transfer, say aye.
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 Motion passes 7-0. And the last item on our agenda this evening, policy 3300, suspension and expulsion.
Motion to approve revisions to policy 3300, suspension and expulsion.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Let's see, Dee, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Sure. The current policy that we have uses model language from MTSBA. Calva Law Office provided the updated language that contains all the key information, but is written to be clearer with parents and students. The update also removes the requirement that notice of an expulsion hearing must be provided 5 days prior to the meeting. While advance notice is required and appropriate, having a specific number of days identified in the policies has prevented us from being able to schedule hearings on the preferred day identified by the parents and the trustees. So that was something that Calva Law Office recommended that we take a look at.
So is that something they pushed to you, or did you experience a problem and ask them?
We had some challenges scheduling earlier this year. Yeah. So we were just discussing with Calva Law that that specific requirement can be problematic. That, we have the ability to work with families. They have the ability to give us notice 2 days beforehand to say, that I need it changed, or 3 days beforehand. So
Any other questions?
This still keeps intact the policy where the board does not hear suspensions ever, right?
Correct.
We have no
correct.
daring if somebody's suspended
Suspensions-
and parents want to escalate it, it does not come to the board.
Suspensions cannot be appealed to the board.
Just for everybody knows that when somebody comes and complains to them outside of board, it's policy.
There's a different procedure where they can appeal to the superintendent, but that decision is final. It cannot come to the board.
It does not apply to expulsion though, right? We're the only ones
Correct.
that can.
You guys are the only ones who can expel.
Any public comment? Are you concerned, this is kind of off the subject, but we're kind of drifting away from MTSBA's recommendations and more towards Calava's, it seems like. Does that worry anybody, or do we have to synchronize possibly?
We're in the middle of kind of looking at that. I mean, we could buy into policy management through Calva. MTSBA policies some of them have gone in a certain direction that seems very, like, for example, the policy about you guys being in schools, that seems very rigid and may not be where Belgrade Schools is. I don't think there's any problem with using multiple examples of policies to try to, create the best thing. And actually, the one before this, the entrance placement and transfer, Cal Law said, take a look at Bozeman's language in that. They've done a good job with it. So, that actually came from Bozeman.
The only concern I have is, as we're talking about budget and money and everything else, that we're spending a lot of money on attorney fees.
Yeah, we're taking a look at that.
And how much do we pay a year to the Montana School Boards Association? $16,000?
That's kind of.
Yeah, it's about 14,000 for your membership dues. And then we also do Assembly and we also do policy management, like a couple of those other things are add-ons for.
And anytime you talk to them on the phone, it's another $100.
No, not always. We're supposed to get 2 hours of free consultation on each item that we call them with. But sometimes they've gone to the point where they've said, this is going to take longer than 2 hours before we even, like when we present the idea. And so then they make us do a retainer.
I'm with Holly on this one. It seems to me we're paying two people.
Yeah, but they do vet the legislature out and recommend policies based on that. And we're probably going to see a crap load of stuff from the legislature this year that changes our policies.
So far, like this, the example of the suspension and expulsion policy, Bea just sent it to us. We haven't bought into her policy management. So there was no additional cost for that.
I know,
We're not saying to get rid of MTSBA, but we're saying we need to.
Well, you could.
Been double dipping into both of them
I
and
think you
using both of
could.
them and
Yeah,
paying.
but you need to prove like we need to use, if we're going to use one or the other, but not both.
Yeah,
I don't think we're getting
don't
our money's
duplicate
worth
it.
out of NTSBA.
Because I do like the recommended policy, then I think the Assembly thing is really nice. I don't know what we pay for it, but it's worth a lot.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys could do some math that would justify one way or the other. But it does seem like Bea's stuff is solid.
Yep. Well, we're taking a look at all of it and we'll, if we want to have a conversation about that and what that looks like, we can do that.
I was going to make a joke about MTSBA. When you call them, you'd have to use a 1-900 number. I expect that to be happening soon. Oh, God. All right.
Call for a vote.
Any other questions?
Press 1 for.
All right.
Answer was yes, please press 1.
No, we got to vote on it still.
Oh.
All right.
Vote.
No, we have not voted yet. Let's get this over with.
This was in our minutes.
That was in your.
You just have to look them over, make sure they're okay, and then.
That was in our minutes that we approved.
We'll do that after this. We need to vote first.
Glad we know what we're doing.
So we don't need to vote on this?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
On the.
You guys lost me there. All in favor of approving revisions to policy 3300, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Joanne,
Aye.
motion carries 7-0. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, shoot.
It's from a previous agenda item.
Come on up.
Okay, sorry, Randy.
Say something.
Well, I thought it was, I'm sorry, I lost track of that, Randy.
That's a really.
I thought you were going to talk about the MOU. I apologize. When I asked for public comment at the MOU, I was looking directly at you. Oh,
Turn the mic on. There you go.
Randy Radke, Belgrade High School. I just would like to encourage the board to go out for both high school and elementary mill levy this year to help our school employees. So thank you for that consideration.
okay. Thank you, Randy.
Just because you said so, Randy.
So he has to come back.
That said, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, Joe, get better.
Not crazy, not crazy. You can
Thank you.
if you graduated